Hello and welcome to the New York Sports Show. I'm your host, Dominic Konoweski. Folks, on the line, we have Dort late model driver Dave Ponton. Dave, hello and welcome to the New York Sports Show.
Hey, hello Dominic. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I hope you're doing well too.
Oh yeah. It's a wonderful day down here in Florida. Great weather for Speed Week. Speed Week's here is about kicking off. Been down there at Alltech working on their track. Wendell Dern's been down there really working hard. They're really doing the best they can to provide us the best racing surface to race on. Tim McCready and some of the big wheels were down there the other night, like Mark Wagner and the future Trey Mills was down there racing, and they were cutting some pretty good laps, I gotta tell you.
Well, that's very good and very cool to hear. Now, Dave, you race at both North Florida and Alltech Raceway Park, of course, spending most of your time up in North Florida. But out of those two tracks, which one do you like to compete at the most?
North Florida, it's a little tight bull ring of a track, and I cut my teeth on that track. I started racing there back in 2001, back when it was an oil-based track, and you know I've raced it most of the time, and it's a shorter track, 3/8 of a mile, so you have to have more of a handling car than a motor car. And Alltech's technical, and it's a lot of fun too. You just got to have a lot of legs under you to carry you down those long straightaways. And but I do prefer North Florida Speedway because of the tight turns and bull ring atmosphere.
That's very cool. Now, as you mentioned, you've been racing for a while, 21 years. That's absolutely crazy. Of course, you've had a lot of success in your racing career, but 21 years, a true veteran of the sport. How would you say your career has progressed from when you were a rookie to now a seasoned vet?
Well, coming leaps and bounds. Back when we first started, I don't believe the sport was quite as competitive back then as it is now. It's getting a lot more technical, and I have moved up to, from sportsman to late model. So I'm out here racing with the big dogs, and having a great time of it. I'm not having as much success as I used to have in the smaller years ago in the sportsman classes, but we're coming along. We're coming along real good. I'm up to speed now with technology, and hopefully going to have us a great year this year.
Yeah, hopefully you will. With that said, what would you say your goals are for this 2022 racing season?
To get a championship at either Alltech, North Florida, or both of them, at least placed in the top 5. Normally, I'm kind of a top 5 kind of guy. And,
yeah, definitely a contender then. Contender, week in, week out, folks. Now, you pilot the number 10X Dort late model. Why number 10?
Well, when I first started, a gentleman that used to race up in Woods Hall, he's up from Bath, New York. When he used to race up there, and they were racing back in the 60s and the 70s, they were racing, the older jalopies, and his car number was 10. And then I started racing out here at North Florida Speedway, which used to be the old Lake City Speedway. It was an oil-based track when I started. And I used to go down in the stands, and I was a fan. My fan favorite was Wayno Reisner, and he was driving the X car. Well, I befriended him and got to know him a little bit, threw him a little bit of money to sponsor. Well, I ended up buying his whole car, and he kind of backed away from the racing, and then that's how I got started. And then I called it the 10X. Respect for the guy that started me and my racing protege, Wayno Reisner, and that's how the 10X was born.
Wow, that is such a cool story. When Dort track racing, well, that's the roots of NASCAR. When you go all the way back, NASCAR started on the stand in the Dort, getting the hands dirty. And now, of course, they moved up to asphalt and concrete. But Dort racing is where it all starts. How does it feel to be, of course, a well-known Dort racer in your area and just piloting a Dort late model?
Oh, it's a wonderful experience, and it's an honor and opportunity to have to be able to drive one of these wonderful cars. It's my way of release. Once you get strapped into one of these cars, the rest of the world just fades away, baby, and you're just out there having a great time. And it's exhilarating for me. I feel like I'm 10 years younger when I walk away from the car. Just real adrenaline rush. I really enjoy the heck out of it. And
yeah, I can't.
All those racers out there that they're struggling for their first win. It ain't about the win. It's about the experience.
100%, and it's all about having fun, If you're having fun, well, you're doing the right thing, folks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So.
Now, Dave, like I mentioned earlier, 21 years in your racing career, do you think that there's going to be a 30-year mark in the future?
Could quite possibly be. I started out racing kind of at an older age. I started at 43. Kind of had to build a business and get set up, so I had enough funding to be able to afford to race in the first place. And I thought it'd be kind of a kick to go down there and try it. And things evolved, and here I am 20 years later, so I don't see why I couldn't make it for another 10 years.
Yeah.
Racing. I hope the sport lasts another 10 years.
You know what?
Racing's having a hard time with the
yes.
Get tires and fuel's going up and trying to get engines and all the parts are on hold. It's just really tough going right now.
100%. I would consider this very changing era for NASCAR, in a way, at the crossroads. A lot of people are going away from the top 3 series. They're not watching it no more, and they're going towards local racing. And then local racing is having its own issues with the sport getting more and more expensive and harder to find parts. Now, when you started, and even to this day, how hard is it to compete, race in and race out competitively?
Oh, my. Well, you got to have a shock manager nowadays, and there's a shock program, then you got to have an engine program and a tire program, and all these elements have to all come together. And if you're like a weekly racer, and of course, dirt racing, you usually have, you get into scrapes, so you got maintenance issues and stuff. So that's a lot of work trying to keep the thing going. But it's definitely gotten a lot more expensive. And
yeah, 100%. And frankly, I think it's sad. Of course, with inflation, just over the years, naturally, every price has gone up. But racing, already, when you look at it, racing has always been expensive to start at, really, unless you go back all the way to the 40s. And there's so many people, younger and older in age, that will never really be able to show their true talents because they're not able to afford to race every week. They're not able to afford to get a team in general. And frankly, I think that's the sad thing about the way racing has gone these days. If you don't really have the money, if you don't really have the backing, well, it doesn't matter how good that you could end up being. No one's going to find out because you don't get that opportunity. And of course, Dave, you got that opportunity and you've had a very successful career. What's your most memorable moment?
Oh, probably winning my first race was one of the most memorable moments. The weekend I first won this race, it was the summer. It was the Winter Fun Fest back in 2005. Then it was the North Florida Speedway. I believe Liz and Phil had just acquired it at that time. Anyway, they were doing the Florida Fun Fest, and I had bought a car, and I had all kinds of people trying to help me. The car wouldn't turn. It was raining. It was cold as crap. We just couldn't get the car to work. Finally, on the third day, we finally got the thing to go around, and I'm racing in the race, and it came all the way down to the last lap. And back then, they didn't have a fence around the track, so you could fly right off the end of the dang track if you weren't careful. Anyway, I'm running down the leader, and the leader spun out in front of me, and I ended up just missing them, and I ended up going out into the field, and I got the car back on the track. By the time I got into 3, and ended up winning the race.
Wow.
And that was the most spectacular, awesome finish that I'd ever experienced. And
it sounds spectacular and awesome. That must have been heart pounding right there. Such a surreal experience. That's amazing.
Miserable weather and all.
Yeah. Wow. Now, Dave, before we go, is there anyone that you'd like to thank or shout out?
Well, Stanley Eldridge, I'd like to thank him. He's the guy that got me started. ASW Performance, Scott Walker, he's the engine man that stays behind me. Makes it affordable for me to race. He really pitches in to make that possible. Anthony Corson at Innovator Race Cars, he's the one that after I pretty much totaled the race car I got, we re-clipped the front and the back and brought it right up to the 2021 standard and got us a shock manager. And right now, quite frankly, I got the best car I've ever had on account of that. So I like to thank Innovator Race Cars, Anthony Corson. I tell you, if you're in the sport, you need your car fixed up, this man can do it. He's a wonderful talent. That's about my company, Ponton Construction, and we frame houses around here in the Lake City area. And if it wasn't for a successful business, I would be racing it all in the first place. So that's about the size of it right there. And I got a couple of guys, Dewey Hall, and he's been racing with me for 20 years. He was racing my other car. I had 2 cars, and I couldn't race them both. I was doing double duty from the late model to the modified and back to the late model, and that was kind of eating me up. So I ended up meeting Dewey Hall, and I put him in the modified, and I run the Sportsman, and we'd run both cars in the same night. And then I ended up building a 10X and a 10XX, which they were twin cars. So he'd race one, and I'd race the other. One year we finished up second and third in the points, respectively. And in fact, he's here right now, still racing with me. His kid, Justin. He's almost a rookie of the year last year at Alltech, and he's a fine driver. And they're running street stocks, and there's a hell of a story unfolding right there as we speak. That's about all I can come up with right off the cuff.
Well, you know what? Definitely incredible, though, on how many people have helped you and people that you get to race with. Dave, I gotta say, very interesting stories you have had. 100% one of my most favorite interviews, and folks, I hope that those who are listening in agree with me on that. Once again, this is Dave Ponton, who drives the number 10X Dort late model at the North Florida Speedway and the Old Tech Raceway Park. Dave, thank you so much for being on.